Hello, and welcome to the Pro Series Conversations from CheckBox Pro. My name is Missy, and I'm the founder of CheckBox Pro, where we help school leaders become their most efficient and effective selves by matching them with ed-focused executive assistants. Each member of our team has over 10 years of experience in the education sphere, and though we may consider ourselves pros in some areas, we can't be an expert in every area. This is why we are excited to bring folks working in the education space to offer tools, tips, and insights to make the life of a school leader even more sustainable. Today, we will hear from Jill Dunchick, who provides high-impact, mission-driven leadership training and coaching to leaders in the education, nonprofit, and for-profit sectors. Prior to opening her own consulting business, she was the Senior Director of Leadership Lens at BES, where she built a nationally recognized program in leadership training. She has a track record of success as a school leader, so she understands the struggles and joy of leading a school. In addition to being passionate about education, she has a deep-seated appreciation for the power of body, mind, and emotional cohesion. Jill holds an energy healing practitioner certification, a massage therapy certification, and is currently a student in the Advanced Studies program to become a Brennan Integrative Practitioner at Barbara Brennan School of Healing. My hope is that we will be able to see how these two passions have come together and how she has leveraged them to support, encourage, and develop school leaders. Hi, Jill.
Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful introduction. Just one point is
Yes.
I actually completed the Brennan integration in 2022. So have been infusing that in my work, and that'll probably come up a little bit later in terms of like it being something that I didn't really promote until the last 3 months.
Lovely. Okay. Well, I think I pulled that off your LinkedIn, so I should have used the bio you sent me. And so there you go. Now you know. I'm like so terrible at updating
where
my
do I
LinkedIn.
have that written? But good to know. Check my LinkedIn.
Yeah, girl, I got your other certification on file. There. I know. I was like, oh wow, more things. Look at that. Like more certifications than I even know. Okay, well, it's so good to have you here today. I was thinking about like, okay, when is the first time I was introduced to Jill? And it's when you were coaching my husband, Parker Couch, during his time as a school leader in Memphis. So I've seen firsthand the benefits of your coaching. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that was like, was it 2015, 16, the first year? Or I think like I always messed together 2014 through 2018. Like I just can't keep track of like what was happening. My daughter was in middle school at that time, so I blame it on that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, lots of energy being put towards things.
Yeah, towards
I
get through middle school.
I think it was 2015. So yeah, so it's been a while. It's been a while.
Almost 10 years. Yep.
Yeah, I know. How did that happen? Okay, wait, but before we jump into questions, and because I, even messed up your bio there at the beginning, is there anything else you would like to tell our listeners about yourself that I might have missed? Specifically, any maybe professional experiences that you feel has prepared you to develop school leaders?
I think it was all in my bio. I think one thing that I think I bring to the work is that my background is in special education. So my work has always been about supporting diverse learners from the beginning. So when I taught in a general middle school and the pull-out population, so kids would come just to me for instruction. And then the next place that I worked was in an alternative middle school where kids had to be removed from their current middle school, even with their IEP, and then they would come into the classroom. And I did that for about 4 years before then getting into my first sort of steps into leadership were in the special education realm. So the real nuances of supporting human beings that don't fit the mold of our current schools or struggle in some way to be in the air quotes regular system that we set up. So I think that has dramatically informed where I've led and how I push my leaders. I often forget, I think the population of my first school where I led was 28% SPED, where I was assistant principal of instruction, but knew all of the work on the back end, one, to keep us legal, which is where a lot of schools are still stuck. And then two, getting us legal, and then two, really looking at our moral and ethical alignment to what we believe good instruction is. And so I think that's the place where a lot of schools are really still struggling. So a place where I really do appreciate pushing leaders, because if we can get the specialized education down morally and ethically aligned, it usually impacts the whole school. And so services that all kids can benefit from are infused throughout the building. So I think that's one of the pieces that I would highlight if you're, in terms of like my work with school.
Yeah.
I think that impacts dramatically the work that I do also outside of schools, because many people come to me and they're like, oh, I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I think I have it. Oh, I have these, other things that come into these other diagnoses or non-diagnoses, diagnosis. I don't know how you say that plural, but that impact them and their sort of perception of self, their perception of how they are growing other people or their ability to grow other people. So I think that's just something that I think infuses the work that I do, that I really put deeply in the bio. And then the other fun fact is, I think I've worked in 34 states. I have life goals all the time. And so I have done yoga in 49 of the 50 states. Fingers crossed we get Hawaii this summer in August. We're supposed to go. But along with that, I think I'm at 34 states that I've worked in. So I see patterns in systems that are set up that, people are like, oh, we can't do that here. It's Minnesota. And I'll ask a few questions and I'll be like, oh, that's very similar to what I see in New Mexico, and that's just the type of, information that I have from having like worked in so many states and so many systems. And then I'm able to connect folks so that they can find ways through different, systemic problems, or roadblocks probably is better to say. Yeah.
So you're not an expert at all. What I'm hearing.
It's
No.
important to keep like beginner's mind in everything we do, right? Like I approach everything from beginner's mindset. It's like, okay, what is actually in front of me right now? What is this, what is this person saying? What is it that I'm feeling as they're speaking? What is it that I'm intuiting as they're speaking to me? And then, really being present, and then just kind of paying attention to like, oh yeah, this reminds me of this, but always from like ground zero every time I work with someone.
That's awesome. Okay, well, so then tell us a little bit about, a brief overview of when you started, your consulting business and what your business focuses on. Just kind of give us, our listeners, an introduction to that.
Sure. I started Jill Dunchick Consulting. I guess it's going to be 4 years, or going into our 4th year, like this week. I think it was like July 3rd or July 7th that I did my LLC application. And I knew I wanted to do, based on, I was previously running a program called Lens, nationally recognized for training leaders to take on more leadership in their organizations. And I liked that work a lot. And so I knew I wanted to keep some level of training people to move up a position, sort of grow in their current organizations. I didn't have a chance to really do a lot of team level work, but because I had been doing that role for 9 years, I would be working with a leader, and I would have, in the past 3 years or 5 years, worked with 4 other people. So known them intimately in terms of a professional relationship, kind of know their blocks. And so I'd be having these, kind of to coach through, coaching through the one person I'm working with and helping them to better get, have a more productive, more cohesive conversation with different members of their team. So put together some team trainings, one that focuses on instruction and coaching, one that focuses really on the soft skills of a team, building cohesion, building trust, how to have crucial conscious conversations, and really working to align teams to their values. And then did similar or have done similar work the past 3 summers with Anwar Abdul Rahman. We do what's called Echelon Leadership Retreats, which are 2-day retreats. I'm in gear to actually get on a plane right after this. And again, just want to call out, I'm in my daughter's room, y'all. So that is the bear picture behind and senior volleyball. Have a little construction happening downstairs, so that's all good. But anyways, so really doing a lot of individual work with folks and then team level work. And I have virtual offerings as well as in-person offerings. I think we're going through a little bit of a switch. When I started, it was, I think, 2021. So really wanted to be a lot heavier on the virtual offerings for a lot of reasons. And now sort of tailoring the offerings to be a lot more in person. I find that I can do, I have an impact cohort, which works really well for some folks that can't travel right now, but for organizations that wanted to send 3 or 4 people to impact for about the same price, I can go to their organization for 2 to 4 days, do in-person trainings, spend time with folks in their work, and also deliver the content in a way that's just really been shifting the last 6 months. But, when I ask around, people still want the virtual option. So I'm like, okay, we have the material, so we'll offer it. So I would say it's a lot of virtual and in-person coaching, training, anywhere between one-on-one coaching to, a team of like usually 8 is where I max out for a coaching of an organization. And then I think the other thing to know, it's customizable. So there's different things like the website. For me, my website can sometimes be overwhelming because it lists a lot. But I do have, because of the SPED background, a lot of experience in SPED instruction. And then because of the way I'm built as a human, I'm very strong on the ops side as well. So wanted to put some trainings out around ops. So we have some of those now that are going to be asynchronous going into the fall. And then the last thing, say, in terms of it being customizable, everything's on there as like a year-long price, but there's some people that I'm like, nope, this is a 3-month contract, and then you tell me if it's working or not. Or we'll look at what our measurements are based on what we said we were going to do in these 3 months. But I offer the trainings and the coaching in 3, 6, and 1 year sort of offerings. And then also sometimes we'll just do like a three coaching really quick. We have this problem coming up and we need to solve it. And so you can just do like a 3 coaching session, depending, especially for people that I've had like previous work relationship with. So it's all of it.
So there's something for everyone, which is nice. Yeah, it's like allows the leader and the team to be able to decide what kind of support they need and make sure it's really tailor focused. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I did look at your website and I was super intrigued and I pulled this language directly off the landing page, right? So I would love to hear a little bit more about the language of developing authentic leaders through body, mind, and emotional cohesion. Just tell us a little bit more about that philosophy for you.
Yeah. Many of you may be familiar with Brené Brown's quote, "Who we are is how we lead." I believe that very, very deeply, like who we are mentally, who we are physically, who we are emotionally, all of our life experiences are going to impact how we show up for the folks that we are meant to lead. You and I were talking about this a little bit in the beginning, before the recording was on. But my background is unique in that I have traditional certifications and master's degrees in, like special education. I have a national certification for exceptional needs. I have my master's from UPenn for educational leadership. And that's sort of the work that I did to progress in my traditional work roles. About 15 years ago, no, it's 20 now, because I started massage therapy school in 2000, I think it was 2002. I graduated, so 2001. So ended up going to massage therapy school while I was teaching, and just had a lot of awareness, healed what was at that point, I think like 15 years of traveling with an asthma machine, like having to breathe asthma medication like 3 times a day. Started in puberty until about say my late 20s when I went to massage therapy school, and just had these experiences that really pushed me as like a human being in terms of like healing and, just sort of what my body can do or could do. And then ended up getting, so did a massage therapy certification in 2002. In 2013, I graduated from a school called the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. And that was a school where really learning the human energy field, how it impacts us mentally, physically, and emotionally, and how issues in the tissues kind of impact us and kind of can serve as the block for why we're not able to do the next thing that, we want to unfold in our life. And that work really heightened my ability to just work with people from like a blank slate, like really just show up for them in a way of like what is present. And I would often hear, and I do know Parker shared this with me as well when he was leading at Memphis Grizzly. He was like, this work is helping me lead, and it's helping me at home too. He just literally said, and I'll hear that a lot. And I believe deeply, like who we are is how we lead. The best of us is going to show up in our homes. The best of us is going to show up at work. The hardest stuff for us is going to show up at work. But we're more often, and in work, most of us know how to be in professional space in order to, hold it together, for lack of a better word, until we can step away and deal with, oh, that was really frustrating, or that was really angry, or that really made me angry, or that made me really sad, but I couldn't express that. And one of the things that I had seen over time is, and for my own self as well, like having to hold all of that in and not having a way to process that out definitely impacted the way I showed up day in and day out, and not in the positive. So helping leaders to kind of like step away and realize, oh, that was actually really frightening for me. It's not appropriate to fall apart in front of my group of people, but how do I move through that frightenness or whatever it is as fast as I can, as slow as I must, in order to better show up. And I think like also looking at the role of leading, you're going to have one-on-one conversations with people. Ideally you're growing them if you're leading, and not just an administrator or a manager. Like a leader will grow people. So it's helping people get really comfortable in owning their ability to grow folks, and notice sort of what stops them from doing it. And that's usually not a mental concept. That's usually something that goes a little bit deeper into their emotions or into their backgrounds or experiences. So it is not counseling, hands down. It is not counseling. It is really aligned deeply. And that's one of my main tenets is intentionality. And my intentionality is to meet people where they are, to support them in their professional work. And so there are times when I am working with people, I'm like, hey, this is actually a little bit deeper than this work. Like either journal that out, or are you working with someone? Because this really is a big thing for you. This probably needs counseling, or therapy, or sometimes it's somatic therapy where they just, go run and move and learn other techniques to support the body. So I think that's I don't know, that was sort of a spider web of answer to it. Felt like coming out, but it really is how I, believe like this is what's coming up is stopping. Like I can hear very clearly what a person says they want to do. I can hear very clearly and sense very clearly where they are, and then explore that in between in ways that I think a lot of folks that just hold traditional trainings don't have access to.
Yeah. So I want to lean in a little bit into like your coaching sessions and like that one-on-one work that you're doing with leaders. And because again, I think this idea, right, and that concept of developing authentic leaders, which I think is I think everybody, right? Everybody wants to show up as our authentic selves. Like in an ideal world, like they wouldn't be code switching. They wouldn't be having different hats and roles but they have to, but it's like, how close can we get to being our authentic selves in every space in which we're operating? And so one of the things you mentioned is like you emphasize aligning your actions with like your core values. So how do you help? Because I mean, I think this is hard for people, right? Like, how do you help school leaders first identify those core values and then be able to strengthen those values in their professional roles?
Yeah, you sent a similar question as like a guide, and I just have the chills now. Um, so, um, so I just got feedback from someone that uh, a woman, Shanita Oliver, out of Becoming Collegiate in Jacksonville. Um, they're a new school, so they're getting a lot of training through their grants. And she just went through the impact cohort, and we're going to continue to work together in the fall. So that's very exciting. But she just came back from a training, and we were just checking in on like, okay, what is that? How are you going to use it? Hey, what did you learn here? Are you going to, where are you going to use that with your team? And she was at a training where the person took her whole team through a values exploration. And she came back and she said to me, I just wanted to let you know, I told the facilitator in the most respectful way that I could that she really needed to talk to you. So if she reaches out, it's because I told her about you. Because she said, I'd never felt my values so deeply than the way you ran up my values training. So she was in Impact, which was a virtual training. And this is like a skill. We will do this in our leadership retreats. We will do this in team training. And we'll usually do it anytime I'm working with leaders on like who you are is how you lead, like who are you, and help to bring them deeper. So I teach two skills that most people don't know in traditional education. I teach the skill of felt sense, and I teach the skill of interoception. And those are words, it's, I'll often, when I present it, I say like, send me energy fingers if you've heard of the word felt sense, and then send me energy fingers if you've heard of the word interoception. Usually I have 1 to 2 in a group of like 12 that have heard of felt sense. And felt sense is a term coined by Eugene Gendlin in a text called Focusing. It is more available on the side of healing and in terms of like a type of, used in therapy, specifically somatic therapy, which is therapy that you don't necessarily talk because the issues are in the tissues. And so you move through a lot and you listen to the parts of the body. And felt sense is what is the definition is it is the sensation that happens before we attach thought to it. So, and I will often use my own journey to get my core values down for Jill Dunchick Consulting. I like 3s, I like 5s. I was stuck with 4 values for about 3 months. I knew intentionality was going to be it's just the way I live my life. It's also something that's very deep. It's actually deeper than the emotions. So when we are really clear with intentionality, that's where we see a lot of the magic line up, and sometimes things just unfold for us. Compassion is something that I've heard often from people. I've had to fire people from roles, and they'll still like friend me on Facebook or like walk up to me. I'll never forget. I have a great story about doing apple chucking in the fall at an orchard up in the Northeast, where someone I had fired is like screaming across the apple orchard. And I'm pretty sure this person, would never want to see me again. And we had a great interaction. So that place of like that Maya Angelou quote of like, people forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel, and just really holding a real strong like level of compassion for folks, even, especially when they're struggling. But I was stuck between honesty and intent and integrity. And so for 4 months, I just kept holding both of those words in my system and noticing, like, which one made me feel stronger? Which one did I feel my feet all the way on the ground for? Which one made my heart kind of, bubble? And essentially, I landed on integrity. For me personally, honesty kind of went into integrity. And I really sat with the idea there are times that I can be honest, and it's not necessarily, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that is delivered with the highest level of integrity, towards human dignity. So it was holding this felt sense in my body and not giving meaning to it. Oh, my heart's beating. That must mean I go with this one. It's like, nope, I just really waited for those 4 months before it landed. So we will do, I usually guide people through a skill. Usually I first use that integrity and the honesty in my own personal, like where I was in a dilemma, for them to feel what that dilemma feels like for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then interoception is the ability to use that felt sense to make informed decisions. So I think it's like in 1 second, the subconscious mind can, and don't quote me on these numbers, but it's something like 11 million things or interactions that the subconscious mind can pick up. The conscious mind is, I think, between 40 and 50 things. And I'm like, I know I can pick up like 3 things in a second, and sometimes that's a little bit much, but 40 seconds that are they're in my conscious, that I'm making decisions about. And so the more we're clear on felt sense, the more access we have to the interoception. And I'll use a lot of examples from my personal life and my professional life, where I had a lot of experience when I was leading, where I would like stand in a hallway, I'd be like, oh, got to go to, 205, walk to 205, 1, 2, 3, something happens, right? Like standing in a hallway, everything looks fine, feels fine. It's like, oh, go check out science, go into science. And, there's something there for me to experience or lead through. And so that was happening to me before I had the trainings that I had. And as those things like kind of heightened up and happening, I was like, all right, like I need some support around what's happening here so that I can better use what's happening to me to make decisions. So I will often work with the leaders in the room and just ask them to tell me about a time that they had a gut feeling or an inner knowing, or like sometimes it's like, you hear the messaging very clearly from here or from here. And so I ask people to break that down for the room to the level that they're comfortable. Like, what is it for you? And so, and then from there, I can help them see, what their higher sense is around and how to use that to lead. So, doing felt sense, doing interoception, and then we bring in their values. And their first question is, okay, these are your values. The first question is, what is your felt sense of this value? And the second question is something like, what does it feel like to what is an action that feels good to do when in alignment with this value? What is an action to take that feels, air quotes, not good, where being in alignment with this value takes you? And I'll often use integrity. And I'll talk about, if I'm in integrity and I'm going through my school and the first graders just all passed an exam, then in integrity, I'm going to go in there and give a shout out to this class. And that feels great. And people will usually be like, oh yeah, my heart's bubbling. And I'm like, yep, that's great. I was like, now, you go down the hallway and you've actually got to put a teacher on an improvement plan, 3 steps later. Okay, take a minute. What's that integrity feel like? And usually people will notice they're a little frozen. So we say, okay, take 2 breaths. And then they're like, oh, okay. I can feel the integrity drop down a little bit from where at first it's like, oh, nobody really likes putting anybody on an improvement plan. But when done well, I've had so many people either get through the improvement plan and stay, or really actually find their deeper purpose and their next step in their life. And so, so I think it's just a way in which honing everybody in on their values through felt sense, through interoception. And then we usually do the next step to that, depending on who I'm working with. If we're working with a team, we'll take the organization values and we'll ask what's the felt sense of the org values. And then notice where, or if at all, your values are at, if there's any tension, where do the values dovetail nicely and where are there, some tension points. And so if somebody's values integrity and the school's value or the organization's values integrity, it's usually a nice match. But sometimes there's nuances in the way the organization defines integrity versus the way the person is defining integrity. And then when we're really doing the deep work, then we take some stress test all of these situations and just get really clear, like you can't actually make a decision and have 5 values have equal importance. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Because if you're really aligning your actions to your values and your organization has 5, there's probably 2 that are of highest priority as you're making next step decisions. And that is okay. Like that is okay to do that. And then we also look at, like there are times when you need to make a move for your organization and it is values aligned and it might actually go in direct contradiction with one of your values. And sometimes it's just the naming of that
is enough.
Is enough to hold it. I think you said something earlier. It's like, how do you, yes, it would be great if everyone could show up authentically all the time, but that's not possible. But what is possible is to not have the times when you are showing up. What is possible is to have the times when you are showing up and you're deciding to keep a part of you back, to not have that come back and need to be processed later.
Yeah.
As we're realizing, you make an informed decision.
Yeah.
Actually, these 3 people hold these ideas. And so in this moment, it feels safest to me to do this. And so I will do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a smart and strong move for like safety and leadership. Now I do talk, if every move you make is, that's a signal for you. Like if
it's
you're
just too much imbalance
10 times a day, you're probably going to want to work with someone on, is it a coach that you need here, or is it therapy that you need here, or is it something else that you need in order to kind of make the step forward, not to say forward, but through whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think that's the interoception and the felt sense. Time and time again, people are like, oh my goodness, like things really landed. Now I get it. I'll do that for new leaders who have a mission, who have a vision, like really help them to like sit with, and I'll reflect back kind of what I feel in my body to see if it is like that what they're feeling, or if I'm feeling or sensing a block with any of that stuff.
Yeah. So I think about like our leaders, right? And they're trying to, like, the work is really hard. It's really hard and it's super taxing emotionally. Like depending on, I could say every school is, but there are certainly some schools that are probably harder to work in just based on the demographics and maybe just like the populations and the community in which they're working in and whether or not you're aligning to those core values, right? Like there's a period of time where potentially it's harder. And several leaders I've talked to have like they're just like, I really need to find my joy in this work. Like you mentioned, like going into one class and that leader being able to feel like this feels really good, right? Like this is in alignment with my values, or this is in alignment with our organization's, whatever they're recognizing it and seeing it. And then of course, 3 doors down, it's, the opposite, but they can hold on to that and they can cling to that joy. Because otherwise, you could get really bogged down by the numbers, and there's a lot of them, like in all the different areas, right? The endless to-do lists, like the interpersonal conflict, which is inevitable, like all the things. So, they think about like to find that encouragement, to find ways to remember why they do this work. And for several, I feel like is to get into the classrooms. Like that's kind of where they find their joy and where they feel like probably because it goes back to their first moments. Like think about ground zero, right? It's like ground zero, I entered this work as a teacher, which was interacting with kids. And um, but with that in mind, this idea of like encouraging leaders to find those moments of joy, like have you found or have you seen ways in which your coaching has positively impacted school leaders? Like like you're sorry, let me rephrase this question. In what ways? Because it's not does it. In what ways have you seen your coaching positively impact school leaders? Influence, productivity, and joy in their work. Does that question make sense?
Yeah. I think the question makes sense. And so like but I think the answer to that would be in what ways. It would be through the surveys that I get back from them. It would be, through feedback that I get when we do coaching sessions. But so it's like, but if I answer the question, what do I do to ensure that joy is intentionally put into my coaching?
Love that. Yeah.
So people who know me, and especially if I led you, especially if it was my first year's leading, like this will not come as a surprise to you all. But I had to, I'm calendared. Olivia was like 2 at the time, right? So, like getting her to daycare, like I was so regimented to make everything air quotes work. And some of my first feedback was like, Jill, do you like love this work? I was like, I love this work. And they're like, nobody knows. So I had to intentionally calendar, like I'm going to send 3 good emails. I'm going to walk through the school and drop 7 positive Post-its. It is, an exam day. I'm going to go to these 3 classes that I know are having exams and just shout out the working environment, not even the result, but just where, like, I don't know, y'all have a 7th grade class or a 9th grade class. And when those kids start showing maturity and focus, like shouting that stuff out. So through like very structured ways, I was able to bring my own joy into my work. And I use the same things that I did to actually coach leaders in those ways. So one is just like work their calendar to make sure that they have spot joy in there. 2, and this is a little bit harder for some people. And when I first started, I was like, oh, this will take, this takes a month for somebody to get this. But sometimes it takes years. And if you've ever worked with me, I don't give templates and say, you have to use this template. Anytime I share a template, I say, what do you like? What don't you like? Here's what a template for an individual meeting should do, for a team meeting, et cetera. So when I work with some folks, if I'm doing a team level work or if I'm working with someone on a weekly coaching basis, normally what we will do is structure their connections with their team through agenda creation, through like when they're side by side with folks. And in that creation, we are literally putting in the agenda like authentic, like legit, specific 2 to 3 things that you need to shout this person out for. And people that know me, like, and if you don't have anything, I do not want to see something vague, period. Like if it was a rough week and something dive bombed, like that's okay. Because there's nothing worse than being shouted out for something that's basic, in my opinion, than to really be like shouted out. And it's interesting to me. I think this goes a little bit to my SPED background, which is like I say, I can measure anything. So I can also pick out like the very parts, like the real parts of like what worked in an event or a sign up or whatever to shout a person out, or in a coach who's coaching someone who they're struggling with. It's like, okay, well, they're setting in their attendance on time. So that's actually helping the ops team. Yes, there's still mass chaos in there, but something is happening in the structure. So it's like really pulling that out specifically and teaching people how to do that. We do direct work in writing emails and written communication to people to make sure that it is like values language as well as the language that we want, that we want to highlight for whatever it is we're attempting to work towards. So I think like, and there is a soft skills part of it. So there's a lot of structure that can be done, and there is a soft skill. And it's usually the place where like I have to sit with a person and say, like, when you go into that classroom to present joy, like, how does that feel? And if they can't feel it, and if they can't sense it, we actually need to sit there a little bit until it lands. And there's very interesting skills to make joy land for a person. Slow down, put pauses in, like really take a minute. Sometimes we'll hit an emotional block, goes through in like 3 minutes. Next thing you know, they're really able to hold joy. There's 2 questions that I ask people that I think are unique. And one is like, what stops you from feeling joy?
Mm-hmm.
And I will then reflect back where I feel blocks if they're not able to really get into that deeper spot. And I really push for them that, like, if you can't feel joy when you're standing up to work with people, the empaths in the room will feel your fear. They will not feel the joy that's underneath it.
Yeah.
They have to like really help them to like get through their fear, or if they need to name frustration. And so sometimes what people think they need to go do this celebration. And I'm like, actually, like, do you need to just express frustration with me? Or actually, do you actually need to say to the group that you're a little frustrated and you have this joy?
Yeah.
And when they're able to hold both of those, it usually feels better to be sitting on the receiving end of that, because like I said, the 11 million things in a second, like somebody's going to pick up on fear or whatever we're not able to yet work through as a leader. And then the second question doesn't deal directly with joy, but I think it's extremely helpful, like when the year is kind of coming to an end. And that question is like, what's your relationship with endings? How have you ended things in the past? And do you know how to hold endings as the door closes, there's a hallway, another door will open? Or do you believe endings need to be this certain type of way? And I think that's just another question that helps people hold the range of emotional and mental experience of leading in a cyclical organization.
Oh.
So
That's super interesting that you say about like even just holding time and space for endings, because it is a practice. I read a book over the summer by my girl Emily P. Freeman, which I just love her. But she wrote a book like how to walk in and out of a room, or how to walk into a room. And the whole concept, right? Like room with air quotes, right? Could be relationships, it could be jobs, it could be literal rooms. And oftentimes we go from one to the other so quickly, and we didn't get to say, this was really hard about this room, or this was the really good things about this room. Or that relationship and what I learned from it and how I grew from it, and also how it was time to be ended, right? And so it just was an interesting thing. So yeah, I imagine, because there's always the next thing for a school leader, right? Like there's always another fire, there's always another meeting, there's always something else. And you probably do get to, you leave one conversation and don't have time to process how that went and then you have to roll into the next one. And so, or at the end of a school year or the end of a quarter, right? And I think it's super important for people to just like take that moment to like think, to process through and celebrate where things need to be celebrated, and also go, no, it's not so great in some ways, and that's okay. Because like, right, progress over perfection, I feel like is just something that we probably all need to learn in so many ways. You make I think the work you're doing and like this aspect of, even you mentioned like calendaring out spots and being really intentional about like, okay, if this is hard for me, if infusing joy into my workday is challenging or a gap for me, right? Like I need to start being intentional and put it on my calendar so I make time and space for it. But I do think there's this relationship between finding joy and or remembering those spots for joy and sustainability for these leaders, right? Like if you just go every single day, even if you have the most amazing data but if you're not recognizing and celebrating and experiencing those spots of joy, then it's just another, I was like, you're going to get burned out in the same way because it's not offset. Like all you're seeing is run, 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 run. And, I think about like, obviously the work of CheckBox Pro is to help just create some space and some capacity for leaders to be able to sustain their work. And I'm always, looking for ways to make it more sustainable for them. And that's partially why I have these interviews, right? Is like I want them to be able to glean some best practices from one another or from an ed adjacent expert who are offering services to help make the day-to-day easier for them. So my question to you, beyond just like that thought about finding joy, like is there anything else or ways in which you see like, or how does your coaching, really, this is the question, how does your coaching contribute to a leader's long-term sustainability and effectiveness, like within their roles?
Yep. So when I went out on my own, one of the big shifts that I did was explicitly include what I call self-awareness and adaptive skills. So, when or if you work with me or if you sign up for a cohort, they're embedded. And most of the time in my coaching, they are embedded. But they're also individualized. So explicitly give a mindfulness quiz that came out of Harvard University, I think in about 2018, which is sort of a start to the cohorts that I run, just bringing awareness to folks in terms of like what they are aware of in their day to day. It's a scored quiz. It's and I love doing self-rating quizzes because it's your information to yourself. I will do, I love the crucial learnings quiz. I think that's what it's called now, that's been online. It gives folks a score. They'll call it a silence or a violence score. I've actually been teaching it in terms of the nervous system, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Most people realize the fight and they know the flight. The freeze is new for some and the fawn is new for most. But helping people to become aware of what their nervous system defaults are when they're challenged. And then I have direct skills to help my freezers, to help my flights, and then my own personal journey as a fighter, and like realizing when I'm coaching someone and I want to tell them what to do, it's probably my time to ask a probe, and usually the other person, kind of finds it. So direct skills around like mindfulness, where they're rating themselves, around how they show up when they're interacting with other folks. And then also give them things to try, such as walking meditations, body scans, breathing, breath work. And usually when people commit to the cohort, it's about 10 minutes a week of agreeing to give these things a try. And some weeks people are like, oh, I'm doing it every day, it's great. And other people are like, oh my gosh, it's, whatever state testing. And I think I like tried the walking meditation at lunch, or whatever. And I'm like, yep, just notice, just notice what that is. And some people like, I didn't do it for 3 days, but I was at peak performance. And then day 4, I was like, oh my gosh, I just need to do the morning scan. And I was like, great. And so try to infuse things that are between 2 and 10 minutes. All of it's like available for anyone online or whatever. And just like help people to figure out what they need to find their own like point of peace. And I'm always trying new things. So it's usually, fun for me to be like, oh yeah, was practicing standing outside barefoot and like, yep, that was great. And then I went on a plane and didn't do it for 3 days, so it's just like sharing that as well. Most people, the feedback that I get at the end of sessions with me or at the end of like a coaching time, it's like this, I'll ask them like, is there an adaptive skill that they're going to keep? Is there one that they want to kind of practice more? And so most of them will name 1 to 2 that actually they'll say, make them more clear in what they're doing and, make it easier to do the tough stuff with, some more strength and what's the word I'm looking for? Like with not just clarity, but like, just like more aligned is probably the best way to say it. So, I've been infusing it for 3 years. So, I can't necessarily say what the long-term impact is, but I have, I think 4 clients who are going into their 5th year of leadership or more, some upwards of year 8, which I think is really high for, the positions. And so I had worked with some of these folks previously. And some of the folks have also moved sort of up with the organization. And those would be people that I have consistently worked with, in the past 5 to 8 years. So
that is a long life for some of these leaders. So, okay, we're nearing the end of our time. And so I want to ask, this is more of a wrap up because I think you've touched on it, but I think it would be great to tie it up with a bow for our listeners, is just based on your experience pre and post your business, right? Like you have a lot of years under your belt. What advice would you give to aspiring school leaders who want to lead authentically and sustainably? And maybe just anywhere from, well, you like 3s and 5s.
I think
So,
that's
if you like 3s and 5s, just, what would be some advice that you would give them?
Yep. Okay, so these might seem a little out of left field, but I think they're extremely important. The first thing is to ask yourself, what is your relationship with power? And I'm going to break that down a little bit, but I think the second question comes in as well in the breakdown, which is, what is my relationship to authority? I love the psychological components of leadership and have seen time and time again, and there are researchers who speak about this, which is basically as we begin to lead, our relationship with authority, meaning our caregivers, whether they are our birth caregivers or someone else stepped in to raise us, and how aware we are of, did we fight our authority and did we take pride in that? Did we always comply with our authority, even though we didn't always agree with what they were asking? And really being clear on yourself, in yourself, of what and how you interacted is going to be important, because you're going to be an authority figure, which kicks to the power question. And I'll have several leaders say, I want to be a servant leader. I want to be a leader in service of others. Yes. And power is at play. Goes back to subconscious mind. Whether you want to be a servant leader and whether you are seen as a servant leader are 2 different things. So yes, you might always align with wanting to be a servant leader, but not everyone who follows you is going to have a relationship with authority in terms of it being real, authority that has been in service to their growth in life. So, so that's one, like, just get really clear, no judgment, but get really clear on how you see authority in your life. Know that you will, whether you want it or not, be seen as an authority figure. I don't think it's a bad thing when you are aligned, but I have so many young leaders coming in being like, no. And I'm like, okay, let's be clear.
Yeah.
And then that kicks into power. And people are like, oh no, I don't have power. You absolutely have power.
Yeah.
And really explore, what does it feel like when you've been powered over? What does it feel like to be in systems where the power is that of a power over? What does it feel like to be the receiver of power over? And then also get into the psychology, if it is you or it's not you, on what it would be. Why would somebody want to use power over? Like, you got to really explore that. And that is so that you can get yourself to a place of power with. But you can say you want power with your team, with your families, with your organization. But unless you're very clear on when you might get triggered into power over, when you might get triggered into not using your power well, you won't have power with.
Yeah.
And then going back to authenticity, I think the more you can speak freely to this would be number 3, the more you can speak freely to your team members when they do have a say, the better off it'll be. And so I always speak in percentages. And this came from my first year leading, when someone was like, Jill, if there's just things we have to do because the org is changing, just tell us. We're used to founding. And so we're used to these conversations, but now it sounds like we don't have a say. So it very much helped me. I'd go into things and I'd say, okay, I'm 50% sure we're going to do this. So the other 50%, you guys can tell me, what am I not seeing?
Yeah.
Or go in and say, I am 90% sure we are doing this. Unless you can give me a red flag, we are going to do this. And I'm aware that half of you don't like it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and you and I will work on that part, but this is where we're going to go. And so I think that's a skill that helps keep people like authentic in the gray area with their team. So really, like, know who you are in your relationship to authority, know who you are in your relationship to power. And then in terms of keeping yourself authentic, kind of speak where you are on a given situation so that you can lead through it and help your team to help you lead through it. I think those would be 3. Would I include anything else? I think on a technical side, structure is important. So making sure you're doing your calendaring each week and you're sending plans, agendas out to folks the week prior meeting to you helps to keep the balance of power in a good spot. That would be all.
That 4, Jill?
That's 4.5, and I didn't get it all the way to 5, like 4.5, but those are just the things that are coming up, and also just wanted to kind of share things that I don't know that other people would share in terms of like what's important in leadership. So,
okay, I have one more question for you, but before we get to that, because I like to wrap up with that one. How do people get in touch with you? What do you have coming up? Any cohorts that are starting? Are you opening, are you still taking people for coaching sessions? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, what is available? The impact cohort will start in July, and those applications are still open. So impact cohort will launch end of July. The asynchronous ops training will be fully available on, I think, July 15th. Parts of it are on my website, but that connects in with Jessica Lamb and Catherine Myers-Crum. So once all of those are up, if you're needing ops training, those are great places to look. Customized trainings, this is a great time. I'm doing different works with teams, traveling to at least 3 cities in the next 4 cities in the next 6 weeks to do customized trainings. So a training in in fall, and then a coaching in between, and then a training in the winter time or late fall. And then just coaching. I can probably take on 1 to 2 new people starting mid-August, and then in September things will open up again. So that's sort of what's available at this point. Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm going to be linking your website into the show notes. So, or episode notes. So, for listeners and wanting to get in touch with you, and then her LinkedIn is also there for you to reference. But okay. So the final question I have for you as we wrap up, it is in the spirit of my company's name. What is one box, big or small, personal or professional, that you hope to check off today?
Good one. I'm flying, so hold on. I have to figure out which coffee shop is nearest to the retreat tomorrow. So that has to get done tonight so that I'm not frantic at 5:30 a.m. So that is one that I will check off.
Caffeine, always a good box to check off. I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, Jill, you have several different services and opportunity, or sorry, for those of you listening, so sorry. If you're struggling to find that peace between your personal and professional self, please know, right, that you're not alone. Jill can attest to that. I have seen it in the work that I've done with leaders. Like, there's camaraderie. There's camaraderie. And we're just all trying to find that balance, for lack of a better word. It's an ongoing process, but a balance that allows you to feel authentic anywhere that you're required to show up. And if this resonates with you, then Jill may just be the perfect place to start. So Jill, I appreciate your time, your energy, your thoughtfulness, that you brought to today's conversation. It's fun to get to watch the work you're doing. And again, I've, got to benefit from your work with my husband. So thank you for bringing some authenticity and sustainability to our own household. But in the meantime, let's keep in touch, and thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you all for listening to today's Pro Series conversation. Our team is always looking for more pros to learn from in the field of education. So if you have a recommendation for a future guest, or maybe you are the pro, then send us a note at info@checkboxpro.com. And if you want to hear from more pros, then like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss an episode. And by doing so, this also helps more folks find our show. So take a moment to check that box off your list today.